call the meeting to order. The Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting has now commenced. It is February 6th at 4:01 p.m. Let's see. This is a virtual meeting. We ask that you mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone and only use the chat function to request to speak. Also, to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, which brings me to the roll call. Maggie Amato Tejas.
Present.
Marianne Bierling.
Present.
Mindy Bernstein.
Present.
Mark Clark. Vicky Cusino. Serena Warake. Lori Meservo.
Present.
Tisha Tallman.
Here.
Jim Toffel.
Here.
Ray Winch.
Present.
Kenny Wong.
Present.
Jay Young, that is me, and I'm here. And then ex officio members, Ann Chineka.
Here.
Corin Manning. Marcos Ismail.
Here.
And Michael Edmonds. Thought I saw Mike.
He's on.
Okay. With that, we need to approve the January minutes. Are there any changes or edits that need to be made to the January minutes? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the January minutes.
I second that.
I think I need
I'll make the motion. So moved.
Okay.
So we've got Jim making the motion and Mindy seconding the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. With that, the January minutes are approved. Let's see. I want to review the agenda real quick. I do want to rearrange things without objection just a bit. Let's see. I would like to do the Pima County Housing Commission update. If there's somebody, is there anybody on right now from the Pima County Housing Commission that can go ahead and give us an update?
I'm here to give a county update.
Great. So let's do that next. And then after that, we can, I'd like to do the HCD update and then get back on track with the agenda as it is. So without objection, I will do that. Actually, I take that back. Let's do the call to the audience first, and then let's do the Pima County update, and then let's do the HCD update. So I'm going to do a call to the audience, no more than 3 minutes per person. The call to the audience is limited to 3 minutes per speaker and a total of 10 minutes. All speakers must share their name to be recorded in the meeting minutes. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak at this time? Anybody in the audience? All right, hearing nobody in the audience that would like to speak, let's move to the Pima County Housing Commission updates. I believe, Sophia, that is you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Sophia Blue, the Affordable Housing Division Manager over here at the Pima County Department of Community and Workforce Development. I am going to give a little update on some of the activities of our commission, but I also wanted to touch a little bit about where we're at with some of the direct services that we provide that keep people housed. So what the county does in that respect. And so here's the update in no particular order. So we had a third round of general fund gap funding for affordable housing. And this is an allocation that our Pima County Board of Supervisors sets aside for affordable housing activities. They have for the past 3 fiscal years. And what we've been using it for, with the exception of a housing needs assessment and comprehensive market study, we have been using it for gap funding for preservation for development of affordable housing. So in the December/January county regional affordable housing commission meetings, the commission endorsed several projects totaling $5 million in new rental development, some home ownership projects. And I can share all those with you. There's quite a few, so I won't get into the details on each project at this time, just to, save people time. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. As I said, we're doing we're engaged in a housing needs assessment with the firm Echo Northwest. And that is the same firm that the city of Tucson used for their housing needs assessment, and also the town of Marana. So when we do get our regional results and our regional kind of strategies back, we will be comparing very apples to apples. So we have the same vendor, the same consultant for the studies, and they've been awesome so far. And we've been kind of seeing what we knew we would see, doing a lot of robust community engagement. So I would encourage anyone, when you see any of our engagement activities come out, focus groups, anything like that, we'd love to have you, or we need that actually. So I didn't catch it on Tuesday, but at the study session, I know that there was some mention, the mayor and council study session on Tuesday, there was some mention of, what are the things that people can provide direct services doing to keep people housed. And so I just wanted to touch on like a few of the programs we have, because obviously we do workforce and we do a lot of different things, but these are kind of like very specific into what keeps people in their homes. So I reached out to our community action agency, which is actually a division here at CWD, and got some details from them today, some more recent information. And for those that don't know what the Community Action Agency is or does, they work in partnership with Emergency Service Network, which is a coalition or collaborative of community-based organizations, and they provide support to individuals and families experiencing financial hardships. So we know that if people are experiencing financial hardships, they're going to end up kind of on that like paycheck to paycheck verge of evictions or any other things that would kind of displace them from where they're housed currently. They provide housing and eviction prevention services, which include emergency rental assistance, rental deposits, mortgage payments, utility deposits, and utility payment assistance. And another thing that they offer, which a lot of people may not know about, is repair and replacement services for essential appliances. So you've got HVAC systems, stoves, refrigerators, washers, dryers, and they also can help our community members determine eligibility for Tucson Water Environmental and Pima County Wastewater Utility discount programs. And they serve everyone, including those within the city of Tucson city limits. In fiscal year 24, they served approximately 5,271. I think it's funny that it's approximately we'll say approximately 5,200 unique households through our comprehensive wraparound services. So there's eviction prevention, rent, mortgage, utility, all of that. They're looking at a $3 million budget for 2025. And that's really not very significant for all of what they do. Challenges that they're having is that there's not available funding to assist households seeking help with water bills. And ARPA and COVID relief have been completely depleted. And then I think there's been a decrease also in the LIHEAP assistance program, so the low income home energy assistance program, that's federal. So doing good work there. All of those things keep people in their homes. Another program that we have here, people have probably heard a lot about it. It's EELS emergency. In 2024, the calendar year, 482 households were helped with legal services in their eviction filings. So 159 of those received full representation in eviction cases. And then there's a 50% success rate for tenants receiving full representation in eviction cases. Without the representation, it goes way far down as far as like if they're going to prevail in their eviction case. We've had, it looks like from 2023 to 2024, an 18% reduction in eviction filings in the Pima County Consolidated Justice Court. That's not that we can say that this is like taking credit for it, but by comparison, Maricopa County broke a record high of like 19 years of eviction filings. So we're in better shape, obviously. And EELS is a big part of that. I think like looking at the full post-pandemic eviction picture here. So it's since July of last year, we've obligated rental assistance on behalf of 573 households with an average per household payment of $3,625. We also have a partnership where we run a hotel. It's a former Knights Inn on Craycroft. We call it the Craycroft. We have a partnership with the city. And we had during the Q2 of the last fiscal year, so October to December, we served 231 individuals there. And that included 116 children. And 94% of our exits were to positive housing destinations. So that's really high because historically we've had an average of 80%. And then 80% of our EELS clients also reside in the city of Tucson limits. And we're asking, because that's a whole other thing, you know, we're talking about ARPA funds and all of that. We're asking for $3 million for our budget this year for EELS. So that's something that obviously just all of those services keeps people housed and it leads to long-term positive outcomes. I also talked to our folks in home repair today. The city of Tucson has their own home repair program. So our home repair program, a lot of the service we provide is for folks in unincorporated Pima County, a little bit in the city of South Tucson. But the activities that are undertaken by these programs, weatherization, roof repair replacement, HVAC, septic repair and replacement, all of those things go towards keeping people in their homes. I'm going to say this a lot. And then we expand our capacity in the types of services provided by partnering with county nonprofits to fund similar programs. And on average, we address a little more than 250 homes annually. Yeah, so, and the funding comes from Housing and Urban Development, Community Block Grant, the U.S. Department of Energy, Arizona Department of Housing, Department of Agriculture, TEP, Southwest Gas, TRICO. And then most recently, we're really proud that we went in as an application partner with the city of Tucson, and we received the PRICE grant from HUD. It's Preservation and Reinvestment Initiative for Community Enhancement. And that's going to go towards benefiting manufactured and mobile home repair for us.
Hey, so, Sophie, I just want to jump in. You got another minute or two.
Oh, I do? Okay.
Yeah, move on.
I didn't even talk about the Regional Housing Commission yet. Sorry, I should have asked how much time I had. So what can I, here, okay, let's do the Housing Commission, update. So we still have a work group working on, exploring sustainable funding strategies and the budget frameworks for the allocation we get from the Board of Supervisors. That's out of some folks, non-conflicted folks on our commission. And then a development of an overall regional planning effort. And next month we'll be having jurisdictional housing needs assessment presentations at our commission meetings. And yeah, that's it. Sorry, I took way too much time.
That's okay. Thanks so much. Tisha, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question, Sophia. I was wondering whether the county knows like what percentage of the funding for these prevention programs are private sources?
We do. I don't have that information off the top of my head right now or off the top of this document I'm working on, but we do know how all of that's broken down.
Can you give me a sense of like if funding were to go away tomorrow on the federal side, how much money would be available from private sources?
Oh, yeah. That's a really sad question. Because like the majority, like the bulk of the percentage of it is from federal funding sources. I mean, that's where we do a lot of our work. Let's see. Does that answer your question? I think that's a good question and we should kind of get into that a little bit more, but yeah.
Agreed. All right. Thank you, Sophia.
Mhm.
Jim?
Thanks for the presentation and update. I was curious if you guys had discussed internally about looking at potentially an affordable housing bond initiative and where your thoughts were on that.
So I can tell you that yes, we've been like kind of just looking at what is that going to look like, and I mean it's still very much something that we would like to kind of put consideration into. But I will say that we have found that the 1997 and 2004 county bond programs, those included a total of $15 million for affordable housing, and that was spent over 21 years. And there was actually an additional amount of interest that we had to pay on those, $4.4 million. And I want to say, let's see how many units we got out of it. I don't know, but it's like somewhere around 900 units of affordable housing we got out of that. And then in the past 3 years, our pay-go general fund allocation, which doesn't cost us any interest, it actually generated more units of affordable housing just by leveraging all of the other funding sources. And it's very flexible, but GO bonds are obviously, you know that, Mr. Toffel, that those are a lot less flexible than gap funding that we put from our general fund.
Marianne?
So yes, it's still something we're considering.
So not too long ago, I talked to Dan Sullivan about it, and he said no, that they're mostly looking at an infrastructure bond. So that's what I heard.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know how long ago that was, but that is one of the things that our work group is looking into. We're looking into everything, really. I mean, including, you know, like the underlying zoning issues and different things that would keep people from building homes. And definitely like GO bonds is in there as a consideration. But yeah, there are many considerations, but yeah, just to keep in mind, if we wanted to advocate for a GO bond, that it would be nice to continue to or add to our general fund allocations. So that's my take on it, Marianne. Thank you.
All right, y'all, in the interest of time, I'm going to suggest that we move on to the next agenda item. Sophia, thanks so much for stopping by and presenting today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And with that, we will go to the HCD update, which is you, Anne.
Thanks, Jay. I'm actually going to ask Corin to kick us off, as I believe PDSD has some things they wanted to share.
Hi, everyone. Corinne Manning with Planning and Development Services. I want to provide an update on the Community Corridors tool, which is a proposed zoning change in the city of Tucson to promote redevelopment of underutilized sites with housing, in particular affordable housing. And this really comes from recommendations from the Commission on Equitable Housing to the mayor and council about 2 years ago. One of those recommendations was to look at changes to our zoning to make it easier to build housing in Tucson. Also, it comes from strategies in the Housing Affordability Strategy for Tucson plan and a lot of other plans and policies in the city. So we've been working on this for the last roughly 2 years. I've done a lot of analysis as well as outreach and community engagement, and have a draft plan that has gone to Planning Commission for a study session, and there is a public hearing on Wednesday, February 26th. So I want to make sure everybody is aware of that public hearing and that opportunity for comment and input to the Planning Commission as they consider this item and their recommendation to the mayor and council. The zoning change would allow higher density development on our corridors in commercial and office zones, and on corridors where we have a lot of vacant sites today. That's really the idea, is how can we take some of our underutilized sites and transform those into housing and mixed use development that is more transit oriented, walkable, climate resilient, and enhances our community and provides the housing that we need in our community. There's some particular incentives for affordable housing beyond the baseline density and height that's allowed through this tool as a development option. That is, again, really geared towards a tool that will promote and create more affordable housing for our community. I'm going to share in the chat the link to the website with information about the proposal, and that will have information about the Planning Commission hearing that will be added in the next few weeks. So hope that many of you can attend that hearing, and encourage you to read more about it, and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Corinne. Couple HCD updates. I'll try to keep it brief, as I know you want to do your do some planning efforts. So couple public events and meetings coming up. We have next week on Tuesday morning, you all get invited to our events as the commission. We have a groundbreaking for our Amazon motel project. So that is, we are renovating the Amazon motel into the Amazon flats. And this is the first phase, 30 units of permanent supportive housing. And so we'll be doing an event out at Amazon next week at 10:30 in the morning. Really want to highlight our partners on that project. We got a grant from Arizona Department of Housing. And as Sophia mentioned, we got some of that gap funding as that project keeps going up in cost based on new discoveries. And then the city also put in some funding for that. The supportive services will be provided by Old Pueblo Community Services, OPCS. So that is next Tuesday, 10:30 a.m. out at Amazon Motel, which is on Miracle Mile. And you should have all gotten an invite. That evening at 5:30 p.m., Tuesday, February 11th at 5:30, we are having a public meeting regarding the Amphi Housing First Resource Center project. So this is the former Fire Station 8 in the Amphi neighborhood. We are working on, just given the rising homelessness numbers and given the fact that we have that site, we're working on trying to open that shelter sooner than later. It won't be our final configuration of what that shelter looks like, but we are working on trying to get folks in there within the next month. So we are doing a public meeting next week, Tuesday, February 11th at 5:30 p.m. at the Salvation Army Chapel on Prince Road, which is 218 East Prince Road. So we'll put this info in the chat. I am going to be here for some of this meeting. I will be leaving a little bit early, as tonight is the first of 6 town halls related to Proposition 414 and providing education to our community And so there will be one town hall in each ward starting tonight. So, and then a bunch next week. And so, if folks are interested in learning more, keep your eyes out for that. And then a couple things related to your planning and goals discussion today. To give one update from mayor and council this past week, based on a recommendation from the commission, from you all, I went to mayor and council asking to reactivate the city's housing trust fund. And at a different date, we can talk more about what that all means. But it is relevant to your conversation today about your goals, in that mayor and council have reactivated, have made it explicitly clear that it is the commission's role to be an oversight body. In terms of, I will present to you at least annually an overview of how much money has been spent in the Housing Trust Fund. And so we can talk about that on a later agenda. Why I bring it up now is there is a little over $320,000 in the Housing Trust Fund today. And mayor and council have asked that you all provide recommendations, given the urgency and severity of the housing crisis and the homelessness crisis. They are asking that you all provide recommendations on where that money should best be directed to help meet the current need. So that's just wanted to bring you all up to speed there. Okay, that seems like enough urgent things for today, but I see Jim has his hand up. You're on mute, Jim.
First of all, that's great news on the Housing Trust Fund. Good job on that. I wasn't aware of that, so that sent chills down my spine. The thing I wanted to reiterate and just kind of stress the importance of is this public hearing for the corridor hearing on February 26th. I think it's important we get a couple commissioners there to speak in favor of it. I'm planning to be there, although there's a U of A basketball game right after that at 7. So hopefully we can get in early. But the neighborhoods are coalescing around this as in opposition to it. There's going to be a couple of the neighborhood associations are going to be there speaking against it. And we need to have a strong voice for it, because the reality is right now there's not a lot of good available sites in the city for projects to get built. There's just not. And this would make a big difference. I think it's a good step in the right direction. And I just encourage some of the other commission members to also attend that public hearing and speak out in favor of it. I mean, this is a thing that we've been asking for and pushing for a long time. And we're really close. We just need to help get it across the finish line.
Thanks, Jim. Ray?
Yeah, thanks so much for that update, Anne, and for that advocacy on the Housing Trust Fund. I'm wondering if you have like a list of what the rules are of how that money can be spent.
Yeah, and part of the goal here is recreating those rules, because 2006, 2007 is when it was most active. And I can absolutely, and I do recommend one of these upcoming meetings, I'm happy to give a more thorough presentation. I have information on how it was spent before, and given it's 20 years later, mayor and council are really interested in what you all think with that. It's $320,000, so it's not going to go a far way in terms of development, but there are things it could support. And so in the past, it went to down payment assistance for low-income homeowners. It went to rental rehabilitation for multifamily properties. There was some money that went to employer-assisted housing. So the city partnered with El Rio and a couple places like that, a TUSD, La Frontera to support housing for their staff that was at the low income categories. And then a little bit for homeowner rehabilitation for low income families, and a little bit for security deposits and kind of damages for landlords. So those are things I'm happy at a future date to go into more detail, but they are looking for you all to sort of recreate what that looks like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Corin, for the updates. With that, let's move into the next agenda item, which is our discussion about commission goals with Southwest Decision Resources.
All right. Thank you, Jay. Good evening, everyone. Want to thank the commissioners and thank our city colleagues. My name is Brian Manwaring. I'm a facilitator with Southwest Decision Resources, and I'm here with my colleague, Ruby Kernkamp. And Ruby, do you want to get your voice on the phone?
Hi all, yeah, I'm Ruby Kernkamp. I'm also a facilitator with SDR based in Tucson. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and so we're here to, as Jay mentioned, to lead a conversation on goals and priority items and issues for the commission here in the coming year. We also want to talk a little bit about facilitation. So Southwest Decision Resources is a facilitation and collaboration firm here in Arizona. We have our largest presence is here in Tucson, which is where Ruby and I are. And yeah, so we've been asked to support the commission here for the next several months and with some facilitation. But there's still some openness in what that would look like. So we want to have a short discussion with you all on what you'd like to see with that or what priorities you'd like to set for the facilitation aspect of it. But then we'll spend the majority of our time. So we want to limit that to maybe 10 minutes of conversation and then take that feedback back to our colleagues at the city and to Jay and Tisha to discuss further what that would look like. And then we'd like to work through some of these priority issues or priority items. And certainly a pretty meaty one just presented itself. So that'll be interesting. You'll see those questions and sort of the framing of these conversations in a read ahead. The read ahead was included in the agenda packet. I think it's the last page, but Ruby just added it to the chat too, so you can click on it directly there. Yeah, so first and foremost, we'll start with the discussion about facilitation, and we'll just spend 10 or so minutes there. And so the question for you all, so again, as I mentioned, and to tee this back up, is that SDR has been, Southwest Decision Resources, SDR, has been asked to support with facilitation the commission for the next 5-6 months. And our city colleagues and Jay really wanted to get more input on what you'd like to see and where that support could be used wisely. So just want to open the floor and see if you all have any thoughts. A couple of other things before we get started on this too, is that my colleague, so SDR was involved with this commission back in early 2024. And that was to help and facilitate a retreat and the outcomes from that retreat. And Colleen Whitaker was part of that team. She couldn't make it. She had a conflict tonight, but she'll be back at the next commission meeting. So with that, and
Brian, I wanted to jump in. I'm not sure if this is the right time, but I also wanted to provide just a couple of minutes of context in terms of kind of, what Tisha and I had been talking about and just kind of taking the feedback from the group. Would now be a good time to kind of provide that context and framework?
Please do, Jay.
Yeah, so I don't want to take up too much time with this, but I do think it's important just to provide a little bit of context about what we're doing and kind of remembering why we asked for the facilitation. So if y'all remember, about a year ago, we had our strategic planning retreat. had a lot of great ideas, a lot of great input, a lot of great discussion. And one of the things that I have heard in my time on the commission is really wanting to make sure that we are using our time wisely, and that with our time we are having an impact and really coming up with suggestions for mayor and council to make housing more equitable and affordable in Tucson. And I think one of the things that has been challenging is, when we have our meetings, the meetings are packed, and it's really hard to carve out that time for deliberation as a group to really figure out, what do we want to do as a group? What are the main issues we think are important, and also not only important, but that we have the capacity to address, or I think really the understanding also to really provide good advice to mayor and council. So I think it's hard to do that. Personally, it's not my skill set, and just trying to run the meetings makes it challenging to do much else in terms of facilitation and just kind of guiding discussion. So today, what we were hoping to do is narrow down the issues that we want to focus on as a group. I was thinking 3 to 5, but this is again just kind of where my head was at after listening to y'all and talking with Tisha and talking with staff and Southwest Decision Resources. And then what I would like to propose as a place to kind of start our discussion in terms of process is that, based on if we come up with a handful of issues that we want to deal with as a commission, I think it would be a good idea to have each subcommittee pick up an issue or two to really deal with and come up with recommendations for, so that the work can be done in our subcommittees, and that we've got in our subcommittees, in addition to the other things we want to deal with, an issue or two that each subcommittee is taking on, to then bring back recommendations to the full commission that we can mull over and see if we want to pass along to mayor and council. So just wanted to provide that kind of context and framework in terms of kind of what I have been thinking, what Tisha and I have talked about, what I've talked about with some of y'all, and just kind of generally what I think we've heard about how we want to do our work going forward. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Brian. I think that's kind of captures everything.
Great. Thank you, Jay. And yeah, so really our conversation will be broke up into 4 pieces today. And so the second one, we'll start working through those issues. We'll look at the sort of a broad set of issues and think through those, maybe criteria for selecting those issues, and talk about this process and that Jay just sort of outlined, and how to move forward with that. So first, we do just want to get some general thoughts just on facilitation support as a whole. And our skill set, what we bring to the table is helping bring people together, help coordinate things, help support robust dialogue, engaged dialogue, those kinds of things. We can help with agenda design, meeting facilitation, documentation, planning, those kinds of things. So we'll first start with this conversation, and then we'll dive in a little bit more into the detail on the issues themselves. So Tisha.
Yes, thank you, Brian. I just wanted to add on to what Jay was saying, because, when we had this discussion, it seems like a million years ago now, even though it wasn't long ago, but we've had a lot of intervening activity since that conversation. So I'd be interested in knowing, Anne, in particular, what it is that you all need. My thought, in speaking with a lot of organizations across the country and municipalities and counties, that funding is a priority at this point, independent of federal sources. So I'm interested in knowing whether prioritization for funding discussions has come to the forefront for you all, or whether it's something else. But I think it's imperative that we engage HCD in a discussion on where they think priorities lie at this point. I've also had a separate discussion, which we've been talking a lot about bonds and the bonding possibility, but I've just recently learned that that is probably not a possibility on housing because of the limits that the state puts on municipalities with bonds. So I'd be interested in knowing whether, any representative from HCD can address that issue as well.
I'm happy to jump in, and I think this could be a larger conversation, but just in terms of needs, I feel like right now my answer is there's no shortage, and we seem to be entering a very uncertain time in terms of the existing funding we do have. So, today, HCD, my department's about 95% funded with federal funding. And so that gives me concern to even be able to continue some of the programs we are doing, depending on what happens with future budget decisions at the federal level. And then I think when I look at, thanks to PDSD and Pima County, we just got updated housing affordability, updated needs assessment numbers in terms of how many units we need. That Tucson Pima Collaboration to End Homelessness report on how many shelter beds we need, transitional housing beds we need, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing. There's no shortage of need. And yes, it does take resources to do that. One thing Sophia pointed out is all of their doing around eviction prevention and keeping people housed. I think we all know that's one of the most efficient, cost-wise ways to. It's a lot better to keep somebody housed than deal with everything once they're not housed. So I think there's many different priorities. You all work in this field, and you also know sort of the challenges that we're experiencing. So really interested in kind of where you all think is most important too.
All right. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Tisha. So, I mean, I'm already feeling this energy to talk through topics, but I just want to make sure we don't shortchange this first discussion just around facilitation support. So just to get any thoughts on that before, and then we'll go head first into priority issues. And the question here is, is there any kind of support you're looking for out of the facilitation team during this time? Ray, see your hand.
Yeah, one thing thinking about having a new working group too, and of being able to support the mobile home park working group in helping to make sure that there's interpretation if that's needed, and just like some of the logistics of that, and supporting with note taking. I imagine some people who are chairing other working groups might want that kind of support too, but no, that's something that I would be thinking about chairing a new working group.
Okay, so support to the working groups, facilitation and/or documentation support. Other thoughts, other interests? Yeah, Lori.
I think it would be really great if we could get some help with when we have discussions. We often have really rich discussions that go well over the time allotted, and then we most of the time do not come back to them nor wrap up any of some of the things that came up in those discussions. And I think it'd be really helpful if someone could help keep us on track with that. We don't get much time for discussion because we still continue to have so many presentations that when we do have discussion, I think it's super important that we make sure we're following up on those and tying up loose ends if we need to.
Okay, so helping with follow through from that kind of engaged dialogue. Mary Ann?
Yeah, thank you, Lori. That was perfect. Also, I just think we need to get focused. We're kind of all over the place. I mean, there's so much to do. And it would be really great if we could take, I think what Jay said, like maybe 5 things that we're going to focus on, in the next year and stay on that. And I also think that the presentations that we have do take over our meetings. And, I often leave feeling like we haven't done anything, and I leave confused and just too much other information. So I'm wondering if there is a way to mix up the meetings so that we do get to meet as a commission, just with commission discussion and ideas, and maybe have another time for updates and other presentations, or we limit those presentations to a meeting so that we can really feel like we're getting somewhere.
Okay. So some more dedicated time for discussion and really digging in on topics and hearing this desire to get to this next topic too of priority issues. So I'm happy to turn that direction now. Jay, I see your hand up. Should we move in that direction or?
Yeah, and I think what I was going to say it segues nicely. I think one of the things that facilitation could really help is as we're talking through these issues, and just for everybody's information, the list of issues that is on the read ahead on the document, they're just things that we came up with off the top of our head that anybody could name, and this is just a starting point. I'm sure there are other things that could be on the list, but I think it's important for us to think about our capacity. Maybe zoning is really important, but if we don't have the capacity or knowledge or whatever to really make any headway there, I think it would be facilitation could help us to determine that and help us prioritize things that maybe the mayor and council needs more info on, or something that's pressing, and also that respects our capacity to be able to get stuff done.
Thank you, Jay. Tisha.
Yeah, I'd like to add funding as a priority for HCD and whatever those sources may be. I know we've talked about bonds again. I don't know that that's available to us, but especially now that we've been given the opportunity to advise and recommend in regards to the housing trust fund run by the city, that I think that now has become a priority.
All right, thank you. And so we're diving in this first conversation. So we're actually the first 2 conversations. So just to tee this up, make sure everybody knows where we're at. So Jay mentioned we have a draft list of priority issues, which you should be able to see on screen. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Okay, great. So we can talk through these. As Jay mentioned, these are drafts. We want your reflections, refinements, thoughts, additions. And this will just be our grand list, our big list for now. The next conversation we'll talk about criteria for how we'll want to weigh these options. And then we want to make sure to leave time today to talk about, as Jay mentioned at the top, how are we going to get from these lists to something tangible, a set of topics, and how to move forward on those. So that's sort of the order of the conversation. So starting with this list of priority issues, does anybody have, so we've added funding, Tisha, other thoughts, refinements, questions about this list? Jim, I see your hand.
So I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. Is this, so we had the retreat a year ago. It was February of last year. And during the retreat, we went through and we revised the mission and the goals. And I've been looking through my computer trying to find the revised mission and goals. And for some reason, I didn't save it. So I guess the first question is, can we maybe start with that And I think it'd be good to get that distributed out to everybody. Because we spent a lot of time together kind of talking about our mission and goals. And if we're going to go through the priorities, I think that's the logical place to start.
Does that reflect what you're talking about here, Jim?
Yeah, I think you guys were the ones that helped us put that together, right?
Yeah. And that,
Yeah.
that came out of the retreat for sure. Jerry?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jim. That's a great suggestion. I was also going to kind of put, when Jim said mission and goals, in light of the new information about the Housing Trust Fund, we've also got duties, right? So there are things I think that we have to do. And then I think what we're talking about here are, other things that we would like to address that, theoretically we don't have to do. So, what other duties do we have aside from essentially now it sounds like, administering or overseeing whatever the vocabulary is, the Housing Trust Fund.
Does that look okay, Jay?
Yeah.
Other thoughts? Again, questions, refinements? All right.
Allison put the mission and goals, a link to the mission and goals in the chat.
Excellent. Thank you, Allison. All right, just leave this open. Oh, go ahead. Is that Jim?
I just said thank you.
All right. So here's our grand list as for now. So we've added the finalizing changes to the mission goals, the Housing Trust Fund. I don't know if I got that language right. If there's a better way to state that, please let me know. Funding for Tisha, that was funding for the commission, funding more broadly speaking?
No, I mean, if we're now responsible for making recommendations out of that Housing Trust Fund, then I think we're also we should be thinking about how that Housing Trust Fund can be funded with some sustainable amount of money. Now, also knowing that 95% of HCD is supported by federal funding, we also, I think it's, since now we've given this extra duty, that we also need to be thinking about funding sources outside of the federal funding for HCD.
Lori?
I just wanted to add that it's not just HCD. All of the agencies that administer housing are all federally funded too. So it's actually much more money than that. So it's huge.
All right. Other thoughts? If not, we'll move to criteria. All right, let's do that. Okay, so next on the list then is criteria. So we want to narrow in that list of 10-ish options, 8 to 10 options, into 3 to 5 chunks or issues to focus on. So what criteria should the commission consider for selecting these priority issues? What makes it worthwhile and meaningful and impactful to the commission? So we just added, the capacity, like depending on the level of effort, the capacity for the commission to address it. Some other things, and again, this is a draft list, so accepting refinements, thoughts, additions. So 1, level of priority for the mayor, city council, and the city. 2, potential level of impact that the commission can make, that their input would make. 3, time and energy investments, which seems somewhat related to the capacity. And then anything else that you might think of. So any thoughts on this list, refinements, additions? Right.
Maybe this is included of the level of potential commission impact. We're really thinking about not just the level of priority for mayor and council, but what's the level of priority for housing and for fulfilling our mission. I would put that above the level of priority for mayor and council. I think that the commission really, our role is pushing for things that are going to affect our mission, which is about housing affordability.
Pick this up here. Thank you, Ray. Does that get to your point? Does this work?
Yeah, that looks great.
Thank you. Kenny.
Hi, thanks for facilitating getting us organized. I was kind of reminded from last year's retreat too, as those points came up. Just interest in how to open up more of a dialogue with like the public and getting neighborhoods and communities involved. I think even at that retreat, there was some idea about like visiting different neighborhoods or associations, and having again more of a dialogue there. I think people are going to be the need is going to be very apparent. The experience of our community is going to be changing in this time. So that to me is like one criteria as well. Like what's happening, and can we get a better sense of that?
Kenny, does this get to your point, or have I mischaracterized this?
Yeah, but I think that gets to it. And if there's a way, I guess that kind of works into facilitation too. I don't know what the right way to do that is for this body, or what's comfortable for folks.
If I could make a quick comment on that, Kenny, I think the best way is when they do the public comments, we need to be out there speaking in favor of the items that we think are important, like this corridor thing. I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay, so that might be a strategy too, and as well as a criteria. So something for us to think about. Tisha.
Yeah, and also to Jim's point, I think that, when we do have our quarterly public meeting in person, or I should say hybrid, that we need to make sure that the public knows where we are, because I think not just showing up and supporting various initiatives, but also us being available as a public commission is important.
Okay. So I do want to note, particularly for those 2 comments, that we're taking detailed notes as well. So Ruby's taking some detailed notes. So we'll have those, although I'm not putting this on this screen right now. So Kenny.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for both of those comments. I think they make a lot of sense, and maybe it would be helpful to know, what are our guidelines, in terms of, okay, what's the best way to be in support or, gather commission members. I guess I'm a little bit fuzzy on, what's how we can communicate and what ways we can show up to, different commission meetings and such.
Okay. Thank you, Kenny. Any other thoughts on criteria measures for selecting these 3 to 5 priority issues for the commission? Or does this look pretty good? All right. I think silence is, Marianne, yes.
Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. I mean, the real bottom line, I believe, from what I'm hearing, is the time and the capacity of the commission to make an impact.
I am in capacity to make an impact.
Yeah, well, that's already on there. You already have that. I'm just commenting. Yeah.
Great. And thank you. Ray?
Yeah, I put in the chat, I think, some other language for that first bullet point that's a little bit more specific and that includes some of the language of the CHD mission.
Okay. Thank you, Ray. I will get that in a second. I can't see my chat screen right now, just because I'm sure. Oh, wait, here it is. It
I've
appeared.
got it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ruby. But we'll get that in there. Thank you for that, Ray. All right. So, let me just see if there's any last final comments on this, and if not, we'll move on to the process. And Jay, I want to just sort of reverse engineering the timing and the changes to the agenda. I want to make sure we turn the floor back to you by 5:20. So we have 20 minutes for that. So any final comments on this before we talk next steps and process? Okay. Ray, is your hand up again, or is it just legacy? And
That's a legacy. I'll take that.
cool, thank you. All righty. So the last conversation ties it all together, and this is kind of, Jay had framed this up really well at the beginning, is how do we take the raw materials now of the list of priority issues and set the agenda for the commission for the next whatever time horizon we're looking at, 6 months, 12 months. And I don't anticipate, we didn't come into this meeting anticipate we would select the items necessarily today, unless everybody's ready to do that. But we'd identify these next steps to do that. And so here again, we just wanted to give some frame up the process that Jay had proposed and provide some openings for input and refinement. So this is a draft, process or a draft set of steps to get to that this set of criteria or set of priority issues. So it's one, finalizing the lists of priority issues and criteria. So we've made headway there. Maybe we are there today. Next would be then to collectively select those 3 to 5 or whatever set of priority issues. And, so somehow crosswalking the criteria to the issues and coming together to collaboratively select those priority issues. From there, identifying an approach or a path to do that. And then we've already heard maybe subgroups or working groups or subcommittees or some mechanism like that, potentially in between meetings to do some of that work. And then identifying a timeline and desired outputs. So Jay, I just want to make sure that kind of captures, or at least I want to see if you want to do any more framing around that, and then we'll get comments and go from there.
Thanks, Brian. The only thing that I would say, if it wasn't clear or hasn't been clear, what we have come up with to this point is really just a starting point and to get the conversation going. So if folks have better ideas about, how to pick the ideas or other ideas, or, what kind of process we should be using to, do our work and to make recommendations to mayor and council, please, by all means, bring those forward. This is really just a kind of a starting point to get the conversation going. If people think this is okay, then great, but it's certainly a very open discussion at this point.
All right, I'm just going to open the floor and see if anybody has any comments on just what Jay had mentioned now, or this process, or thoughts on where we go from today to getting to that set of 3 to 5 priority issues. So I'll open the floor. Any thoughts? Maggie, I see your hand.
I guess the only thing I would want, as far as like the third bullet, the approach to all of this would be some in-person meetings. I don't know if that's where this goes, but I feel like any kind of discussion it's going to be, I think, more impactful and if we meet in person as much as possible while we discuss these things.
All right, and I see somebody is offering support with emojis. Thank you, Maggie. Other thoughts, comments? Maybe a more specific question is, oh, yeah, Kenny, I see your hand.
Yeah, sorry, just taking a minute to take things in. I know the funding issue is like pretty dire at the moment. It has been and it will be further. So in coming with our priorities, also making sure that we've got a well-rounded set of goals around the many dimensions of housing, right? How it's impacting folks and protections that we might be able to, ensure that, evictions or whatever strategies, that we're kind of addressing a big picture of how all these things are tied together. So, it could be capacity within our community to be doing the work that they do. But also just the real, inflow of insecurity and precarity that people are facing.
Thank you, Kenny. I've noted at least one of those in the criteria, sort of the evolution of the funding picture. Jay, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, I don't know that I have this fully formed yet, but looking at just the initial list that we have, like last year we addressed affordable housing supply with recommendations. So, should we do that again? And I'm just thinking about not that one in particular, but like what things on this list are being addressed already and being addressed well, where we think, maybe more input is not necessary, or, we understand that kind of like, let's just take homelessness. Like we think the city of Tucson is doing all that it can with the resources that it has, and there's not much else it could do. So just like what's the, thinking about what is currently being done compared to like what kind of recommendations we think we could offer. And I think one of the other things that's been really challenging about most of these issues is I think it's hard to really know all of the things that are happening, right? Whether it's, the county's doing something, the city's doing something. Like, I feel like we are probably as in the know as most anybody, but I'm often surprised, I'll hear about some other initiative or something else that's happening that I didn't know about. So, I think it's kind of hard to keep up with all of the things that are happening so that we're making sure that, the things that we do decide to focus in on are, maybe lacking in visibility or, really aren't being addressed in a way that we're hearing about or that we know about. The zoning is another thing, right? It's like, we just heard about the corridors tool that will, theoretically change zoning to, maybe have a pretty big impact on, the ability to build multifamily. So, just another example of like what's actually, where is success being had versus things that are, not being talked about or lagging behind.
A very wordy bullet point for that, Jay. We can always refine that later. All right, so let me put a little bit of pressure on you guys. Because I do want to try to uphold my time commitment for Jay and finish this in 10 minutes. So my sense is that we are here, or you are here, you're here. So what's next? How do we get here to collectively select a set of three to five priority issues? And how much do you want to do here in full commission versus how much do you want to do in between meetings, and how might that happen if that's the case? Mindy, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. A preference for me would be meeting in person to work on these issues. I have a hard time doing a Zoom as a work. And my suggestion is an in-person to work on the issues.
Thank you, Mindy.
Thank you.
Duly noted. And Marianne.
Yeah, how do I say this? I actually forgot what the heck I was going to say, and that has plagued me recently. But oh yes, now I know. I'm thinking that perhaps instead of having our subcommittee meetings, for the next couple of months, we have like 2 full commission meetings to get through this for the next few months, so that we can not break up into groups and cause more conversation because of what one subcommittee put together and another doesn't like, or I think we should be doing this as a group and maybe forego some subcommittee meetings in order to get this done once and for all.
Can somebody, Marianne or somebody else, like how would that? So there'd be multiple full commission meetings in a month. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm at least 2.
Okay. I saw some hearts and some other, I'll just call them some more supportive emojis.
Oh, cool. They love me. Yeah.
Awesome. Jay.
Just to kind of build off Marianne's suggestion, I think another way we could think of it is, if we end up doing a lot of heavy lifting in our full CEHD meetings, we can always use the subcommittee meetings for filling out or filling in information or deliberating a little bit more and bringing back to the full commission if not everybody is an expert on something or isn't that interested. So I guess my point is more just thinking about like, if we go that direction, how can the subcommittees potentially support the full commission as it deliberates together?
Right.
I also really liked a suggestion a couple people made earlier in this meeting of trying to do some of the presentation work outside of the meeting and really using the meeting time for that decision-making collaboration, the things that really need to happen when we're together. And especially if it's going to be reading a list of updates, some numbers, some facts, is to send it out ahead of time and really expect commissioners to spend the time to read that update before the meeting. And like, if there are a couple things that are confusing and need to be talked about in an update, or if it's something really big, like the idea that HCD has 95% of its funding is federal and there needs to be some conversation about that, like absolutely bring that in. But just the straight up reports, like I don't think we need to use as much commission time for reading reports.
Marianne.
Yeah, so Jay, just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that this 2 meetings of the commission in lieu of subcommittees is a regular thing. It's just to get what we want to get done here with these priority issues. So it's not a long term. I would hope that, we'd be able to get this done in 3 meetings at the max.
Jay.
Yeah, no, Marianne, I think that sounds great and that makes sense. I was also just going to build on what Ray was saying. These days, if you're going to do a PowerPoint presentation, if you were going to do that to the commission, you could record your PowerPoint presentation and send it out to the commission with you talking, or you could send out the PowerPoint presentation with a recorded message that summarizes the main points in 5 minutes. And if we need more information, we've got the the presentation. So I do think that there are a lot of maybe more innovative, efficient ways to, basically give those presentations, like what Ray was saying, outside of the meetings. So
Many more happy emojis. We'll celebrate those.
I could send 1,000 of them.
Maybe that's a new rule for the commission. Everybody gets happy emojis for.
Sounds like we have a quorum around a couple of these things.
Yeah, Jay, how do you want to take this? I mean, we just have a couple more minutes. So yeah, how do we take these recommendations and move this?
This is Maggie, and what Jay was just saying on the presentations, I totally agree. And I think there should be maybe a time for those presentations, some kind of a time maximum. I recently did my own information session, which I said the thought was I was gonna do it in 5 minutes, and it was 20 minutes. So, sometimes presentations just reiterate and reiterate and reiterate the same thing. So some kind of a time max. That way, we're not listening to 30-minute presentations too.
Thank you. Just a note, Allison put something in chat noting that the March meeting is the next regularly scheduled hybrid / in-person meeting. So Jay, I do want to turn it back to you and see how we put a pin in this for now, or what's next, or how we determine that.
Such a good question. I mean, it seems like just the thing that comes to my mind is like, let's pick the issues that we want to work. And I don't know if maybe like, we take between now and the next meeting to really, individually look at the list, or, I also want to make sure that like, nothing got added to the list of potential things that we could deal with. So, that was definitely not my intention either. So if there are things that are missing, or, whatever, let's make sure to get those up there. But I'm not sure, honestly. Maybe like I said, that for the next meeting, we come ready to, take a vote, or in some way choose the issues that we want to address. I don't know. Does that answer your question, Brian? I'm not totally sure.
I think so, and I also, would want to put that to other commissioners and to, also city staff, and see what's feasible. One thing too, just another tool we could potentially use between now and the next meeting would be some polling, doing some sensing amongst the group. Just and so when we come in next time, everybody's together, there's at least a rough sense of where people's energy is, and that will start.
I love that. I think that sounds good.
And I do see Marianne had mentioned, can we agree on another full commission meeting? And Marianne, did you just have your hand up, or did you?
Yeah, I did. Just that was my question, is if we can agree on another full commission meeting. But I'm hoping, I don't know how y'all feel, but I would like to limit the presentations for our March meeting so we can get this done. And I love the idea of the video updates. I think that's fabulous. We're all adults. We can read this stuff, and bring and listen to it, and bring, any feedback to a meeting. But for the next in-person meeting, I think we limit any presentations, total package, to 15 minutes, so that that's all we're giving people. The total time is 15 minutes, so we can get on this.
So maybe a proposal, given that and given all of this, is we talk with the city, and with Jay and Tisha. We talk through some of these options. It sounds like maybe the next meeting is this regular scheduled meeting. We do some polling or some sensing in between. It's more focused conversation at that next meeting to get to these priority issues. And we talk about some options in between on what it might look like to do to have other mechanisms to get the presentation and information sharing. And if another meeting is feasible and what that would look like, and we bring that back to the next meeting. Is that an okay next step given where we're at? And Mindy, I see your hand.
Thank you. I'm feeling that the city just came to us with an ask. And that's what's in the forefront of my mind. We've been given an ask, and how do we move forward quickly to work on that ask? So I'm looking at all, that's where my thoughts are at. So
Yes, there's
looking at-
one definitive option and ask with sounds like something very real behind it, and it's urgent. That's kind of what I'm hearing, Mindy.
Me too. I'm trying to put my hand down.
All right. I do feel some pressure to make sure Jay can get the agenda. So should we just take this offline because we're scheduled to meet tomorrow to debrief and kind of figure out what's next? And I think through all this, we determine the next steps. I mean, there is this urgent item too. I don't want to leave that hanging either. So I don't know if that can wait a meeting or what to do with that.
I think regrouping tomorrow and kind of debriefing and figuring out next steps makes sense. At the risk of complicating it a little bit more, I mean, I fully agree with Mindy, right? It's like this thing has been put on our plate that, seems to have some urgency, but I actually don't think it's the same thing as what we're talking about. I mean, again, I'm like, if we're going to have to do that, that's a duty. And the things that we're talking about now, none of this are things that we have to do. I mean, we could literally just have presentations all the time and just be like a lot of other commissions and not do much. So I think there needs to be some separation of like, this is what we're doing collectively because we think this is the direction that we need to go as a commission to give recommendations. And then, like I said, there are these other duties that we kind of have to fulfill. So, maybe we think about, I mean, because it sounds like we're kind of thinking about a mini retreat. I mean, if we're going to get together for 4 hours in person, that's more than a meeting. And, maybe we carve out a little bit of time to talk about the housing trust fund. But again, I'm a little bit reticent because I just think I think we can get sidetracked by the housing trust fund. And that's a duty that we may have to perform as opposed to the things that we want to do as a commission. So whatever that's worth.
All right. So for now, I mean, I think the recommendation right now is to put a pin in this, meet tomorrow, figure out our next steps, and then come back to the commission with an idea of what that would look like. With the understanding that there's real energy with moving forward in some certain ways, right? So folding that into that conversation tomorrow. So with that, Jay, should we just leave that pin in that for now?
I think that makes sense. I just want to, see if there. Yeah, go ahead, Tish. I was just going to see if there was any feedback from the group about like, is that where we are? Does that make sense? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do also feel the urgency, Mindy, around the new duty in regards to the housing trust fund. However, we do need to have some process behind that. So that's not something that we can just jump into and make decisions on. So I think that, Jay, perhaps myself, maybe you want a working group, Jay, I'll leave that up to you, but maybe there's a process that needs to take place in the interim before we meet next so that we can make some sort of decisions on that request.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And, I'm also, if anybody's feeling like super energized and has ideas and wants to like kind of join in the, talking about the direction, I'm happy to have other people, join us in the kind of leadership and decision-making processes. So, you can reach out to me or whatever, but, yeah, I just want to make sure that the process is as open and accessible as possible to those that want to have input and steer where we're going. So yeah, I think we can put a pin in it. I think we're good. Yeah.
Not seeing any comments. So with that, I'm gonna go quiet, and it's nice talking with you all tonight. And yeah, Jay, back to you.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate that help and facilitation. Let's see. I think that we are at the presentation from Rachel Milne about sanctioned encampments.
Hi, this is Margaret Adams with the City of Phoenix. Rachel and Scott are able to
I'm sorry, Margaret.
You're kind of muffled.
Your audio is a bit off, Margaret.
Just sounded kind of muffled, jumbled.
No, we can't hear you. No, you might want to go out and come back in.
While we're waiting, I just wanted to thank Brian and his team. Really appreciate the facilitation. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
While we are waiting for the presentation, I'm just looking at what else is on the agenda. Obviously, we've got some subcommittee reports. We've obviously got next steps as well. So we do have, obviously, we're talking about, having maybe a longer meeting in March. So obviously, we will kind of keep everybody updated. But at this point, March 6th from 4 to 6 is would be a hybrid meeting. So we would need to figure out where to do that. Although I would love to nominate Tisha and Primavera because the owl is pretty great. So I don't know if that's a possibility. And then if you can see it on the agenda, the various upcoming subcommittee meetings. And just an FYI, we are looking at changing the equitable housing strategies time just to accommodate folks' schedules that seem to have changed a little bit. And Margaret's back, so let's see.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Sounds better, I think. Yeah.
Okay, great. I have a quick presentation, and I will be quick because I heard all of your comments about the presentation.
I think you've got like maybe 25 minutes at this point, so.
Okay. Are y'all able to do this? Perfect. So my name is Margaret Adams. I'm with our Office of Homeless Solutions here in the City of Phoenix. And we were invited to talk a little bit about our safe outdoor space. And before I sort of launch into our safe outdoor space, I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of why we created the safe outdoor space. So the City of Phoenix, as you all may know, we had a very large encampment around in our downtown area that was right outside of our largest single adult shelter, and also sort of it's the key campus, but it's a large co-location of services for people experiencing homelessness. And so we were the Office of Homeless Solutions was created just over 2 years ago. And one of our first objectives as an office was to really work on solutions to that large encampment and figure out you know, services for folks and make sure that we were creating, you know, that we were sort of creating a healthier environment in that community. And so that meant that we had to do a couple of different things at once. And one of the things that we didn't really have diversity in our shelter system. And so we had to create, as we were confronting this large encampment, we knew that if we were going to engage with folks, one of our first priorities had to be creating new shelter placements that folks wanted to use. And we didn't have enough shelter beds to start with. So we needed to expand our shelter capacity. So this slide sort of talks a little bit about the shelter capacity that we added in the community. And then some of those were temporary beds to sort of help us in this large encampment decommissioning. We had about between 700 and 1,000 people in that large encampment. Our office and our partner outreach teams engaged close to over 700 people, and 580 of those or so accepted services when we were rolling that out. So we were really needing to create quickly some new diversity and add new shelter capacity in our community. Now, our office is also focused on housing, and we know that housing is really what ends homelessness, but we also had a need for shelter for folks who were living outside. So I just wanted to sort of frame that up a little bit about the safe outdoor space. When we were engaging the folks in that large encampment, a lot of them really were not interested in coming into a congregate shelter or even some of the non-congregate shelter spaces that we had opened. There are sort of the three P's that we have really confronted when we were engaging with folks that seem to be barriers to people coming into shelter and accessing services. And those three P's were pets, partners, and property. And so all of the shelters that the city of Phoenix has been standing up really account for those things. We provide space for people's property, and we will store people's property. We allow pets at our sites, and then we also want to make sure that we have opportunities for partners. So those were the things that we were really trying to work on, making sure that we had capacity for. So that was sort of the background and the impetus for our safe outdoor space. The safe outdoor space is a structured campsite, if you will. And so this is an aerial view of our site. It used to be a state of Arizona surplus warehouse owned by the state. But our safe outdoor space is completely voluntary. So it is something that, you know, when our outreach teams are engaging folks, we talk to folks about what services and shelters might be available. And this has been one that has been quite appealing for certain people who may not be wanting to go into a congregate shelter or even one of our non-congregate shelters. We have outdoor sleeping areas, so you'll see pictures of it, but we have a large awning and turf, and people are issued a tent and bedding when they come in, and they get about a 10 by 10 site where you put up their tents, and they also have a storage bin. All of the tents are uniform and distributed when folks come in and decide to be a participant at the safe outdoor space. We also have a large warehouse for indoor heat and cold respite. We offer 3 meals a day. We also have a number of services on site. So we have the city of Phoenix owns and has staff on site, but we also subcontract with other service providers in the community to help us with access to behavioral health treatment, access to employment services, behavioral health services, treatment services, all of that, we have partners on site who will help us access. This is also, we also don't have walk-up services, so this is referral only. Again, it comes from our outreach teams. Will be making referrals into the site. We have a number of partnerships that we engage in to support this. Keys to Change is our sort of primary day-to-day operations partner. St. Vincent de Paul provides our meal services. Community Bridges does sort of all of that navigation, case management. We also have workforce embedded into our programming with a number of partners there. And then we also wanted to make sure that folks could access any services that they needed on site. So we've got restroom, showers, laundry. We also have 24/7 security. And then one of the things that's been really important to the community and was really important when we were zoning this site is the creation of what we call a good neighbor agreement. So the city of Phoenix, we are now kind of owner operator, partial operator, subcontractor of operations for 3 emergency shelters, or 3 sites, including the site outdoor space, and then 2 other emergency shelters. But we are asked to work with the surrounding businesses or neighbors to create a good neighbor agreement. And what that agreement says is it's sort of an outline of the expectations of the city, of the neighbors, of the people who are using the site. We really ask that folks, we really do a co-developed agreement with the neighborhood, and we also have a community advisory committee. And so that is an opportunity for the city to, come together with our neighbors and talk about any issues related to the site, make adjustments as we need, and then also to share the outcomes and successes of the site. This is also, it's not a completely like no barrier site, but it is as low barrier as possible. We do have a code of conduct and site agreements, community agreements that folks that folks are agreeing to, to sort of collaborate around when they agree and want to stay at the safe outdoor space. Is there a question?
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Real quick on the community advisory committee, do you have the folks who are living in the encampments on the advisory committee?
So they are not on this advisory committee, but we do have other spaces like town halls and other mechanisms for getting feedback for the site. So we do have mechanisms for participant input, and we do respond accordingly.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a great question. So this is what the sort of site looks like. When we purchased the site, it didn't have this turf underneath it, but this awning was there. We did have to do some construction when we purchased the site to sort of, transform it into something that was going to be, we had to really upgrade the fire life and safety. We had to put sprinkler systems and lighting underneath this awning here. And then you can't really see it, but there's a ramp into this large warehouse. The site physically is just a great site for something like this because it has this large warehouse space that gets cool in the summer and is a place of warmth in the winter. But it also has office spaces and things like that allow us to do a lot of that case management and things like that we do on site. We also have, bike racks, and really wanted to put a lot of the amenities that you would want to see sort of anywhere. So even though this isn't technically an emergency shelter, we offer so many of the amenities that you would see at any other emergency shelter. And in fact, in some cases, much more. We have a dog run. We have picnic tables. We have, shaded areas. Again, we have a laundry service that comes once a week, so folks can do their own laundry on site or use a laundry service. We have Circle the City coming on site. Our healthcare for the homeless comes in once a week to help us with, making sure that folks are connected to medical care. So we have a range of partnerships that really help make this a very holistic range of services that are available right on site. We also have indoor non-congregate shelter opportunities on site. We've got 38 units in our X wings. So you all, I think, may have some of these types of buildings or in Tucson, I thought. But this is a company called Steel and Spark that they reconfigure these shipping containers, and these are sort of in an X shape, and they have 1 or 2 bed units here. These are all solar powered, so these are off grid. There is no restrooms in these, but you can see this is sort of what the inside of what one of our single units look like. Some storage, a place to plug in your phone and that sort of thing, a place to sleep, and then a little desk there. So we opened the safe outdoor space right as we were decommissioning, sort of ending our the decommissioning of that large encampment. So in November of 24 was our 1-year anniversary of operations of the safe outdoor space. And in that year, we served over 1,300 people. And we really look at, again, positive exits from our safe outdoor space really are about moving people either to indoor shelter or, another higher level of service that they may need. Is there a question?
Yeah, I'm wondering what it means to decommission an encampment.
So for us, it means that we had closed those blocks to camping. So we had about 15 blocks surrounding the key campus, and it meant that we went block by block over a period of months and engaged. We did one-on-one, block by block, meeting folks, asking, what did they need? Where were they willing to go? What services were they willing to take? But we were required by, the city was sued, and we were required to close those sidewalks to camping. And so what that meant was we had to remove those folks that were camping and figure out where else they could go. And when we did that, we weren't going to say, hey, just move along. We needed to come to the table with new types of services and shelter that people wanted to take. I see the comment about animals. That was one of the other things that we really needed to build into this, which is making sure that we could take animals at any of the service sites that we were standing up. Is there another question?
Yes, thank you. Average length of stay?
So we don't have a length of stay requirement. We are just now starting to look at that. It's been about 90 days on average, but I will say, like, we just had someone move into housing from the safe outdoor space who had been with us from the beginning. So we aren't asking people, we do try to promote with our actions and our programming. We try to promote a shorter length of stay, but we don't have a length of stay, quote unquote, like, you can only stay here 90 days or anything like that. Our what we've seen on average in that year is about between 60 and 90.
And then
we do have folks, moving on to other places, and some folks just say, you know what, this isn't a good fit.
Did you capture the data similar to Continuum of Cares and HMIS that would percentage of increase with
programs are in our HMIS. Yes.
Okay, great. And do you recall, like what was the percentage of increased income upon exiting from this particular space, and also the percentage to positive destination?
So we're at about a 31% positive exit destination rate from the safe outdoor space. I don't have I can get you the outcomes for, income growth. Because we have embedded workforce in here, so you can see we've got 104 referrals, but I think we've had about 26 or so folks actually attain employment. So we are looking at that, and I can certainly send those. I just don't have that right at the tip of my them. I will also say that we treat these in HMIS, for the HMIS question, we treat these as street outreach and supportive services only projects, because they're not technically like an indoor shelter. But I definitely, we definitely want to look at that. And that is sort of why we look at these positive exits, as even moving into an emergency shelter is considered a positive exit, as it would be from like a street outreach program. So I'm going to tell you really quickly our safe outdoor space. So 69% of our participants have non-cash benefits at exit. My dashboard doesn't tell me right now the income growth, though, but we can certainly put that for you if you're interested. But it's definitely something that. Any other questions? So I want to say that this hasn't been a low cost intervention. I think I used to work for a national consulting firm before I joined the city of Phoenix, and I worked in a lot of different communities, and I had seen variations of structured campsites or safe parking programs and different types of things. One of the things about this safe outdoor space is that we really did want to seriously make a commitment into both the quality of the site, the livability of the site, the health and safety of the site, and the overlay of the supportive services. It was really, really important for us to make sure that we had strong operations and strong supportive services to make this program successful. So you'll see that this is not a low cost intervention. It took us about $6.5 million to purchase and convert the site into this current use. But the city does now own this site. And then you can see what our operating and supporting services costs are annually. So that'll be, something that we're paying for on an ongoing basis, as long as the site is in this operating in this way. I will also say that the city council and our zoning folks have given us a 3-year time horizon to operate this intervention in this space. And so at year 2, we really have to come back and figure out what the next steps are.
I see Mindy has a question, and then Tisha.
Yes, thank you. Were you able, or did you do any cost analysis of what the expenditures would have been per person that was homeless without the shelter? So they're first responders, ER, police encounters, jail, prison, court time.
done that in a while. That those data have been done in the past. And I think we have, range sort of similar to other communities, at around, $40,000 to keep someone sort of, a chronically homeless individual unsheltered versus, these lower cost interventions. I think we've done those comparisons mostly to housing, like supportive housing, and looking at just the cost benefit for having someone in supportive housing or providing someone with the housing subsidy and services. But we did not do that for this site specifically. We were really responding to the lawsuit and some of the things that we were required to do in a very short period of time. But those are all things that we are looking at now as and I want to say also that the safe outdoor space is one part of a full continuum of services that our office is investing in, right? So everything from prevention, outreach, all the way to developing, new housing sites. So, we're also doing like hotel conversions and things like that for permanent housing. So, I definitely want to stress that this is one intervention, but it has really helped us in being able to provide services in an area that has had a significant number of people who are unsheltered for many years.
Thank you.
I would liken it to Wildcat, I think, for y'all. Like it's sort of, for us, it's that place for us to get folks who have been unsheltered for a really long time connected to services.
Am I okay to go, Jay?
Please.
Okay. First of all, Margaret, thank you. And I chair the subcommittee that has brought you here today. And the subcommittee and the commission, full commission does know, the subcommittee talked to Rachel Milne and she presented the full array of services that are provided in the continuum of care. But we really wanted to hone in on this piece because this is something unique that hasn't been tried in Tucson, and we wanted to present it as a way of a potential recommendation to mayor and council. So that's the context, Margaret, and I appreciate you coming in and doing this very much, and congratulate and applaud you all on this endeavor. My question is regarding funding sources. So how was this funded?
So we used ARPA funds for some of it. We applied for some funding from the Department of Housing for some of it. And then we are also asking for general fund allocations for some of it. But a lot of it is our ARPA funding. And so that allowed us to make the purchase, to get that initial operations going, do that conversion construction.
And I did notice that there are a number of collaborations you have with nonprofits to provide services. Is that included in the total cost here that we're seeing, or is that something?
Yes, so the operations and supportive services, those are our contracts it's both the city's cost to like maintain the facility. It's our contract with our community-based organizations that help us operate and provide those supportive services. So yes, that is those partnerships.
Okay, are there any other questions, y'all, before we move to our next agenda item and adjourn? Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, if not, I'll jump off and say thank you again for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Let me know if you have any questions.
We appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Margaret. It's good to see you.
I know, Jim, great to see you too. Take care.
All right, y'all. We have one agenda item left, maybe two technically, but We'll take a few minutes for subcommittee reports. The first is affordable housing.
Okay, so we had a good meeting. We got a presentation about the city's $7 million grant that they received from HUD for affordable housing. The money's going to go towards zoning reforms, tiny homes. Some of it's going to pay to HCD staff, capacity building for infill development, impact fee subsidies. It was a very competitive RFP process, and I think like 10 or 15% of the applicants received an award. So it was very good that the Tucson received that. We got an update on the Plan Tucson, and then we talked about Proposition 414 and the amount of money that's going to be set aside for affordable housing. They're going to have $14 million set aside for affordable housing, additional $2 million to create the housing trust fund, to bolster the housing trust fund, I should say, and then $750,000 to be set aside for impact fee waivers. One of the things we finished up with was talking about doing a housing cost study, and was it a housing cost study? Or was it a housing study? I may be confused. I wrote down housing cost study, but I think that's going to be a topic here in the next couple of weeks.
All right, thanks so much, Jim. Next is equitable housing strategies. We had a great meeting as usual, and we also got a presentation about Plan Tucson, and ended up, I think, at least in my opinion, diving in a little bit more deeply than I had anticipated. But that was a great use of our time. We talked about Prop 414, and then just generally talked about equity issues. And one of the main things that came up that we discussed is the mobile home working group, which I know Ray wants to say a little bit more about. So Ray, take it away.
Thank you so much. Yeah, at the last meeting, thanks for your support in voting for CHD to host a mobile home park focused working group. So I have a little link for interest form for people to also say what their availability is. I know not everyone was at the last meeting, so I just wanted to take a second to check back in to see who was interested in being a part of that. I believe Jay, Mindy, and Maggie were who said they were interested, but I'm not positive.
You're correct about Mindy.
And Maggie.
Marianne, go ahead.
Yeah, we also, I think we talked about it in the affordable housing subcommittee as well, and I know I'm interested.
That's a cat.
Oh, sorry, that's my cat. Sorry.
Neto, then am I allowed to directly email people the doodle form, or should you do that?
Hey Ray, we can send it out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Anything else about the mobile home working group, Ray?
I think that's it. I'm talking with Sophia about connecting with the Pima County Regional Affordable Housing Commission as well. I'm really hoping that it'll be a multi-sector, and met with the Pima County Health Department this weekend at the Heat Summit, since people in mobile home parks may remember are 8 times more likely to die of heat-related deaths in their homes. So really want to get the public health department in on that conversation.
Cool. Thanks so much, Ray. And that was it for equitable housing strategies. And the last one is housing first.
Yes, so we weren't able to meet this last time. Tuesday was our meeting, and the nation had a lot of other things on its mind on Tuesday. We also lost Wendy Asher from the commission and also from our subcommittee. So I would ask if anyone is interested in being on our subcommittee, please volunteer. let Jay know or let myself know or Rachel. We would sure like another person to join since Wendy is now no longer with us. That being said, we were the subcommittee that brought this particular piece to the commission. We're bringing it to the commission with the recommendation that this be a recommendation to the mayor and council as a consideration for inclusion as a part of the continuum of care, or I should say as a part of the entire continuum for housing that the city provides.
Great, thanks so much, Tisha. Obviously, we will need to take that up as a group to discuss it, and we can talk about agendizing it tomorrow when we meet to plan for our next meeting and next steps. With that, I think we are at the end of our agenda, unless there is any last minute questions, comments, concerns. All right, thanks everybody. We're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you. Bye, Jay.
Thanks, everybody.